Well, hello and welcome to our third annual Talk About series here at the Jefferson County Library. My name is Gretchen, and today we're going to be having Heather Dion come and present some information about CASA, that Central Oregon advocacy group here for kids in the foster care system. So I'm going to introduce or let Heather come up here and have the floor, and she's going to talk. And if you have questions, you can even email them in. Dion's looking on Facebook, so he'll also do that because we're also on Facebook Live, as you know. So without further ado, here's Heather. Thank you, Heather, for coming.
Hi, thank you. Thank you, Gretchen. Thanks for everyone who's listening. And I am happy today to talk about CASA of Central Oregon. We are a nonprofit organization that advocates for children in foster care here in Central Oregon. So like Gretchen said, my name is Heather Dion, and I'm the executive director here of CASA of Central Oregon. And I am happy to share that, so our organization recruits, trains, and supports volunteers to advocate for children in foster care. We serve children in Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties with volunteers to make sure that every child in foster care in Central Oregon has an advocate who can help them get to a safe and permanent home as quickly as possible. And I am here particularly to recruit more volunteers to help children in foster care. And my hope is that after you hear my presentation, you will know more about foster care here in Central Oregon and be inspired to get involved or to share it with others so that they will become CASA volunteers themselves. So let me talk about what foster care looks like here in Central Oregon. And that is that today, right now, there are about 275 children who are in foster care in Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson counties. So that's as far south as La Pine, as far north as up here in Jefferson County, up just here in Madras, as far east as Prineville, and as far west as out by Camp Sherman area. So it's about 7,000 square feet. So right now, like I said, there's about 275 children in foster care. Over the course of the year, we'll have about 430 children who spend time in foster care. And so what brings a child into foster care? A child comes into foster care because they have experienced profound abuse and neglect, and they're found to be in an imminent threat of harm. And when I say profound abuse and neglect, I mean the kind of things that we don't want to think about when we think about children in our community. Abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, children's needs not being met. And there are absolutely children who are experiencing that here in Central Oregon. And when they're found to be in an imminent threat of harm, that is when they are removed by a circuit court judge so that they are safe. And I often talk about foster care as children are between a rock and a hard place. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But so the children are no longer in an imminent threat of harm, but foster care is a really hard place to grow up. And when a child has an advocate, when they have a CASA advocate, that is a volunteer who is appointed by the judge to advocate for their needs, they fare better during their time in care. We're really lucky here in Central Oregon, and the majority of our children have a CASA advocate. So about 228 children today are served with their own CASA advocate, which is wonderful. But that means that there are 47 children who don't. And those are the kids that keep me up at night. Those are the kids that I go, all right, who is on their side? Who is that one person who is their cheerleader and their connector, and that person who's making sure that their individual needs are not lost in the hard place that's foster care? The good news is we can help those kids, like we can serve those kids. And so when I said that my goal is to recruit more volunteers, it's because here in Central Oregon, if we had 50 additional volunteers to serve kids in foster care, then every child in Central Oregon would have the benefit of a CASA volunteer. So that's, 50 is a big number, but it is also very achievable, and we can do that right here in our community. And so that's all of Central Oregon. What does that look like right here in Jefferson County? So right here in Jefferson County today, there are 36 children who are in foster care. Over the course of last year, there were 65 children. So that's 2 classrooms full. Right now, there's a classroom full of children right here in Jefferson County who are in foster care. That is, that they've experienced that kind of abuse and neglect that made them in an imminent threat of harm, and now they have been brought into the foster care system to keep them safe. The good news is the majority of those children have a CASA volunteer, which is great. Like Jefferson County, you guys turn out for your kids, which is incredible. But we are still waiting, but we do have 6 children who are currently waiting for a volunteer. To serve those kids, it literally is 3 volunteers. So when I say, help me talk about this, help me share this with people, literally it's 3 people, and we could serve all of children in Jefferson County with a CASA volunteer. And that's really important, because when I talk about how foster care is a hard place for children to grow up, what that looks like is in Central Oregon, a child in foster care will have an average of 4 different caseworkers during their time in care. So that's that ODHS caseworker who's responsible for their day-to-day care and making sure that their needs are met. That position's turning over a lot. They'll live in an average of 3 different foster homes. These are children who are moving around a lot. So the adults in their life are changing. They'll be in care for an average of 2 years. We want to make it our job that they have 1 CASA volunteer, that they have 1 volunteer who can get to know them and advocate for them within the court system and the community. The CASA program was started in the 1970s by a judge named Judge David Sukup up in Seattle. And when a child's in foster care, the major decision to bring them into care or to return them back to their parents or to move them out of care is made by a judge. It's made by a circuit court judge. These judges are making major decisions about children. They've never met the child. And so Judge Sukup in the 1970s was going to make a determination to terminate a parent's rights. That's forever legally separate a child from their parents. That's a decision that's going to affect a child for the rest of their life. It's going to follow that child forever. And the judge is looking around the courtroom, and he's looking at the parents and the parents' attorneys, and he's looking at the state of Washington and their attorneys. And he realizes that he's going to make this decision that's going to affect this child, and he doesn't know how the child feels about it. He doesn't know if it's in the best interest of the child. So that's how the CASA program was born. So that when a judge is making those determinations about whether or not to return a child back to the parent or what the child needs, he always has, or he or she, always has the perspective of an independent observer whose sole job it is to advocate for that child's best interest. So anytime a judge is making those determinations here in Jefferson County, they have a CASA report in front of them, and they are looking at it, and they are reading what the CASA says is the best interest of the child. And the CASA is there in court making sure that that child's unique needs are met. Anytime there's that new caseworker who is just getting up to speed on the case, the CASA is their #1 resource to know what is best for that child and what that child needs. Next time that child's moving into a new foster home, the CASA can be the first person on the phone to say, let me tell you about this kiddo. Let me tell you about how much they love soccer and about what a picky eater they are. And don't try to make them eat vegetables, because they're not going to do it. That CASA can also come and visit the child the next day, so that child knows, and children have told us that every time they are in a new home, knowing that CASA is there, knowing that CASA follows their path, just gives them such a feeling of just security during their time in foster care. So that's why CASAs are important, and that's why I think that all children should have them. And I could talk about CASAs all day, but I would rather show a video and highlight the work that we do and hear from a CASA herself about what she thinks the work is important.
The first time I met Emma, she was in a stroller in the courthouse lobby. I was very nervous. I had just been sworn in as a CASA, and this was my very first case. After I read the case notes, there was a lot of fear of the unknown, and I was very nervous based on the phone call, how the mother was going to treat me. And I was like, oh no, maybe I'm in over my head, like maybe this is not what I should be doing. But when I saw her, all that fear went away, and I knew, okay, yeah, this is it. And this is what I'm meant to do. I'm gonna be sure this little girl is okay. And I did fall in love with her the minute I saw her, for sure. Emma's parents, when they were clean and sober, were great. They both really cared, but they just couldn't maintain. And at points they would be so aggressive towards me that it was fearful. And the judge had ordered me the ability to go in 24 hours a day because he wanted someone to be watching all the time. And I can't tell you how many times I drove by their house and I couldn't do it. And then other times I could. Definitely the case I've cried the most on. I've gotten tougher as the years have gone on, but lots of tears over this one because of the abuse of the parents of me. And then wondering, what she was enduring. Emma went back to her father's custody. Her mother was not allowed to be around. Then her mother came back in the picture, and that's when things started falling apart again. First I contacted the Hope Chest and got clothes, and I knew her favorite toy was Winnie the Pooh, and asked if they could find one of those. And then I just walked in with all of this stuff and she said, "Niece." And she knew me straight away. Every time she was moved foster homes, I would make a point to be there the next day. So she always knew that I knew where she was. At the hearing to terminate her parents' rights, I shared with the judge she has spent 34 of 63 months in substitute care, 45 months of her life in DH custody. She is now in her 4th foster home over the course of her life. She is a smart, beautiful, resilient little 5-year-old, but she lives with constant uncertainty. It is an honor for me to speak on her behalf as her CASA, but it is also heartbreaking to think that I, as her CASA, have been the most consistent person in her life and know the most about her history. The parents' rights were terminated and Emma was legally free to be adopted.
I was adopted when I was like 8, I think. And that was when she stopped being my CASA. But that does not stop any part of our relationship.
I had really prepared her for a formal ceremony, and she was waiting in the jury box with me. And Judge Forty, who'd been on her case the whole time, which was really significant, snuck out and said, "Who's this?" And I said, "Oh, Judge, this is Your Honor, this is my famous girl." And he said, "And who are all these people?" Because the courtroom was full of people, and she said, "Well, those are the people that love me," like confident.
I feel like Denise is a family member to me. She put like an amazing part in my life. It's like my life is a play, and she's like the director of it, and she totally pulls it together. 3 words: I love Denise.
So when I talk about the benefits that a CASA has for a child in foster care, obviously there's the intangible benefits of a child. When they have that adult who cares about them and they know it, and you can feel their special relationship. There have been national studies done for a child about when a child is in foster care, when they have a CASA, they fare better during their time in care. So what that looks like is they spend less time in care, their case closes more quickly. During their time in care, they're more likely to be connected to services. You can imagine a child who's experienced profound abuse and neglect has got some medical needs that need to be attended to, some mental health needs, some dental care. The CASA can be instrumental in making sure that the child is connected to those services. A child that with a CASA does better in school and is less likely to be expelled. And when their case closes and they go home, they're more likely to stay home and they're less likely to come back into care. So having a CASA really does help for a child in foster care. And so we're seeking your help. We're looking for more volunteers to advocate for children. And so we are looking for people to become volunteers or to spread the word and share about why this is important work and how people can get involved to help Jefferson County's literally the most vulnerable children in our community. keep pushing the wrong button. So if you are wondering, like, how can I become a CASA volunteer? Let me tell you. So you go to casaofcentraloregon.org is our website, and you click on the volunteer page. And based on that, you can fill out a volunteer application or email us, and we can answer any questions that you have. We have another volunteer training that starts next week, including one that's going to be in the evenings on Zoom, so you can do it comfortably from your home. If you can watch this video, you can do a Zoom training. And then we also have an in-person training that's going to begin in May in Redmond. So all CASAs do have to they have to complete a background check, and they need to go through a 40-hour training. But if you are 21 years old, if you can pass a background check, and if you can drive, and if you have a heart for children in foster care, you can become a CASA. Our CASAs are in their 20s, they're in their 80s. There are people who are retired, and there are people who have full-time jobs. They are parents, they are grandparents, they're people who have never had children. Truly, they are just people who are passionate about this work and have a heart for service. And that's truly, anyone can be a CASA volunteer, and anyone can make a difference for a child in foster care. So thank you. Thanks for listening today. Questions? Yes. Do we have any questions?
I do.
Yes.
What would you say is the volunteer commitment term? And
Oh, yeah. Thank you for asking. Yeah. So we do ask for a 2-year time commitment, because we talk about that average length of time that a child's in foster care. And so what we want is we want to know if somebody can be the consistent adult during those 2 years. Life happens, we get it, people move, people get sick, but we do ask for that 2 years. Within that 2 years, it's typically 10 to 15 hours a month. So it really isn't very much, and it's pretty flexible. It can be done around a job or an active life.
can you give me an idea of what kinds of activities or requests come for a CASA volunteer?
Yeah, so our CASAs meet with the child at least once a month. So that's the fun part. And it can be more than that. It can be meeting with a child at school. It can be, going to a dance recital, soccer game, spending time with them. It's getting to know everyone in that child's life. So it's getting to know the foster parents, the teacher, the caseworker, the doctor, and being the connector of all of the adults in their life. It means attending meetings, any meeting that involves the child that CASA attends and is able to speak for that child's best interest. So that could be school conferences, that could be medical appointments, that can be meetings at ODHS. And then anytime there's a court decision that affects that child, making sure that that child's voice is heard in the courtroom.
Does a CASA volunteer only do one child at a time, or what about families?
Yeah, so we try to assign a CASA to a child or sibling group. So if there's 2 or 3 kids who come in, we want them to have one CASA so that they can really keep those siblings connected. After you've been a CASA for a while, you have the option to take additional cases, but we typically just start out with one case, which usually just has 1 or 2 kids.
I noticed when Denise was talking, she said she was a little nervous when she first went in. I guess, is there a contingency for that? If I volunteer and I feel like I'm a little nervous, is there somebody that could go with me, or how would you handle that?
Yeah, we never want our CASA volunteers to feel or be unsafe. So we have staff that can go with someone, or what that could look like is if you're meeting with someone, maybe a parent or someone who you feel unsafe with, looking to meet maybe at the ODHS office with the caseworker or at a public space. So there's lots of options for how the CASA can meet folks who might make them uncomfortable in a way that's safe. Yeah.
This doesn't have anything to do with the volunteers, but
yeah.
What's been the impact of your job on your own life?
Oh, good question. Our volunteers are the coolest people. Like, they're just incredible people. So the opportunity to see, just to see community members who are willing to really make a difference, and almost heroic things that a CASA will do for a child is incredibly inspiring. It's given me a lot more compassion for families whose children are in foster care. It's really easy to sort of vilify or go, oh my gosh, how could a parent do that? It's a lot more complicated for that. And I have more of a deeper understanding of childhood trauma and substance abuse and mental illness. And so it's given me a lot more compassion for people in our community. So more compassion and more inspiration.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
we're glad that you could come and share this, and I hope that people will, reach out to you and to CASA and find out even more if they want to get involved.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.